What's up guys, my name is Ace, and today we're going to be touching base with XDefiant. I know I haven't made a video about this in quite some time, and that's because I've been feeling like I'm going to hit that YouTube curse where the moment I make a video wondering like, what's going on, where's our launch date, then they will immediately announce the launch and that video will be useless. But that hasn't been happening, so let's just hope that this video will encourage that curse to happen. As of right now, we still don't have any official launch date for XDefiant. Initially, they did mention that XDefiant would be launched later this summer, and therefore, if we are taking that literally, that gives us a September 21st deadline, so we're coming pretty close to that. Although it's likely they purposely gave us a vague timeline because they honestly didn't know exactly when all the approvals and stuff would be going through. But over the past few weeks, Mark Rubin has been fairly active on Twitter, replying to people and just kind of giving us little updates here or there on where they're at with the process. So that's what I wanted to go through today. And then a little bit later in the video, I did want to have a section talking about some of my concerns with the launch timing of XDefiant. But let's dive back. A couple weeks ago, Mark Rubin on Twitter gave us a nice update on sort of what's going on with the game here. And the main takeaway from this paragraph is they are currently in the phase where they're submitting XDefiant for release, and they're submitting these to the first parties like PlayStation and Xbox, for instance. And since it's a brand new IP and not a sequel to a sequel to a sequel, like we would see with Call of Duty, for instance, it does take longer for this process to go through. And he has mentioned before there will be potentially multiple rounds of this where they submit to these first parties, then those first parties return with a list of things that need to be fixed, and then they fix those things and resubmit again. And in a more recent tweet from earlier this week, he did mention that Sony still hasn't approved the game yet, and he also mentioned Microsoft's not delaying anything based on what he's responding to here. Now, I don't know if that means that Microsoft has already fully approved it, or they're just not actively delaying it like the tweet he's responding to was suggesting. But even as of just a few days ago, at least we know PlayStation still hasn't officially approved XDefiant, and XDefiant can't launch until that approval goes through. Now, some people did notice that the PEGI approvals went through a little while ago, but that's not to be confused with these first-party approvals. PEGI is just basically rating for what age group the game is approved for, whether it's like an 18-plus game or 16-plus, for instance. So that's what we're waiting for at this point, is those first-party approvals. And Mark did say he promises when he has something certain to say, he'll say it. And that makes sense. You obviously don't want to promise a release date and then have it held up by these approvals that are essentially out of your hands. And again, since this is a brand new IP, that approval process isn't quite as streamlined as it would be for something like Call of Duty that launches every single year. Now, one thing a lot of people have been speculating is that they're going to do a shadow drop, kind of like what we saw when Apex Legends released, where it just dropped out of nowhere. Like there wasn't any marketing or hype or build up or anything. It was just like, hey, check it out, the game's live. And Mark Rubin did respond to this, and he mentioned they won't be shadow dropping the game, so you'll have time to preload, etc. Now, that doesn't necessarily mean there's going to be a huge lead time from when they announce the release of the game and when the game actually launches, but at the bare minimum, it looks like we're going to get at least a few days of lead time from when they announce the game's launch to when the game actually launches. So that's where we're at right now when it comes to the release of XDefiant. Unfortunately, still no official release date at the time of recording this video, but it seems like at this point it could honestly be any moment where they announce the launch date of XDefiant, so it's something to definitely keep an eye out for in the coming days or weeks. The next thing I wanted to talk about a little bit is a concern that somebody shared on Twitter that XDefiant will end up releasing too close to Modern Warfare 3. And I wanted to share Mark's response as well as my thoughts on this particular topic. So Mark said to this, "We will always have to deal with whatever the COD of the year is. We want this game to be going for many years, so we just have to accept the timing and do our best to be the game we want to be." So it seems like he's not particularly concerned about launching too close to Modern Warfare 3. However, I am quite concerned about this for the overall success of XDefiant. Now, I know not everybody that's interested in XDefiant is also going to be getting Modern Warfare 3. But at the end of the day, there will likely be a huge overlap in players that would be interested in XDefiant that are also planning on getting and playing Modern Warfare 3. XDefiant's going to be the closest COD competitor we've had in a while now. And despite much of the negativity you see in the COD community and the whole COD is dead sentiment that you may see, it's still Call of Duty, and Modern Warfare 3 is likely to be topping sales charts just like Call of Duty does every year. And of course, competing directly against that with a similar launch period with a brand new IP, that's got to be at least a little bit worrying. And I really do fear that if they launch too close before the release of Modern Warfare 3, I fear this may not give a lot of players enough time to dive deep and really get hooked into XDefiant. I think a lot of people are just going to be using XDefiant as that holdover game to play until the release of Modern Warfare 3, where they will just switch over to Modern Warfare 3 because they're primarily Call of Duty players. And getting those players back after the fact may be difficult for XDefiant. And I'll be honest, I'm likely going to be one of those players. As excited as I am for XDefiant to drop, I'm definitely looking forward to playing this game. At the end of the day, Call of Duty is what holds my interest the most. And the moment Modern Warfare 3 drops, all of my attention is going to have to be shifted toward Modern Warfare 3. Additionally, the Modern Warfare 3 beta is coming up fairly soon. It's actually coming in less than a month for that first weekend on PlayStation. And not only do they have the full game of Modern Warfare 3 to compete with, they're also going to have those beta weekends to compete with in October. And I do worry that that's going to cut into the initial hype and the initial excitement for XDefiant, if you're going to have that FPS community sort of split on being hyped for the beta versus being hyped for XDefiant's launch. Now, ideally, I still think a spring launch is the absolute ideal time to launch a Call of Duty competitor. That's the time when the current COD is typically really starting to get stale, people are getting burnt out on it, and they're looking for anything to branch out to, especially anything similar to Call of Duty to branch out to, and it's rare that we see FPS games drop during that time. In recent years, there's been a lot of like RPGs, for instance, that drop around that time, and they're highly successful, and even those pull a lot of Call of Duty players away from Call of Duty. So just imagine if a COD competitor came in at that time. I think that would be very successful for them. And then they'd also have plenty of time to really hook players in and build up that loyalty to the game before the hype cycle starts for the next Call of Duty that's coming out. So I really do feel that spring would have been the absolute ideal time to launch, but I also understand it's very expensive to delay a game that long, and at this stage, it's very unlikely that XDefiant's going to decide to go for a long delay like that, since it seems like they're on the verge of being ready for launch at least. Now, at the end of the day, I don't think XDefiant's going to completely flop if it launches too close to Modern Warfare 3. I think there are many people that are just so burnt out with the Call of Duty franchise, or just really looking forward to XDefiant over Call of Duty, and therefore I think XDefiant will still have its dedicated player base. I just fear it won't reach its full potential though, because typically with a game, even if you're planning on supporting it long term, the maximum amount of interest and hype is going to be happening within that launch window, and the amount of hype you see early on will often dictate how things end up going long term. And I do fear that if they have a few big weeks of hype and then Call of Duty drops and a lot of the people just jump ship, it may be hard to bring those players back if they haven't had enough time to really build up that loyalty to the game. Now, of course, time will tell. I'm just really looking forward to getting my hands on this game. I think at this point, the sooner they launch, the better, and I'm really hoping they do manage to launch before the end of summer like they said they were initially planning on. But I guess we'll just have to wait and see. And with that, this is where I'm curious to hear from you guys in those comments down below. What are your thoughts on XDefiant at the moment? Are you guys excited for this game to launch? Do you feel like we are cutting it pretty close to the launch of Modern Warfare 3? And do you think that will have a big negative impact on the game? Or do you have a different opinion? If you enjoyed the video, a like rating is always appreciated. And don't forget to subscribe for more if you haven't already. I'll talk to you guys next time.